Today, really excited to have Mark Roberge here. I grew up in Boston. My first startup was in Boston. Mark is an icon in so many ways, the CRO at HubSpot, managing director at Stage 2 Capital, great lecturer at Harvard Business School. And oh yeah, by the way, he's authored the Sales Acceleration Formula, which I think many of us have read.
Great book.
It's
Love it.
phenomenal.
Thanks, guys.
But really excited to have Mark here. Before I hand it off to him, just one thing, folks, please do use the Q&A panel in Zoom to ask any questions that you may have. That'll help us make sure that we can tee Mark up appropriately, or if there's something great and iconic and we want to follow up afterwards, that'll give us a chance to make sure that we've got that. But with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mark Roberge to talk a little bit more about the science of reestablishing growth. Mark, I'm switching you to host right now, our first transition of the day.
Great. No, thanks for that. Thanks for that intro, Richard, and the kudos, Pete. Excited to be here with the group. So I'm going to just share I can switch over to mine now. My deck, is that right?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, as the team said, I will, and we're okay here, Richard?
You're good.
Okay, let me just move into presentation mode. So as the team said, like, yeah, I'll take questions throughout, and we'll, just fire them away in the chat as we come up. And so this is kind of the journey I've been on the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. Partially at HBS, partially just parachuting into a lot of startups. That's what I did before we started Stage 2 Capital. Is I probably parachuted into a different company every quarter, and spent 3 months with them, 1 day a week. Studied the sales funnel, listened to sales calls, talked to customers, and basically came back to the investor and management team with what I call go-to-market assessment, which is a perspective on my ideas of some of the key go-to-market risks that could burn them in the upcoming year, and what I've seen sort of best-in-class companies do to offset those risks. So I think I did that with like 16 companies or so, and then I invested in a bunch of other ones, and I helped less intimately a bunch of others, and started to really do a lot of thinking about these questions here on growth. Like, when should you scale? How fast? Like, there's such critical questions, in my opinion, on like the success or failure of a startup. You wait too long, and the blitz scaling framework will burn you, and someone's going to beat you to it. You go too early, and you burn a lot of cash and can kill yourself. You know what I mean? So, and it's kind of amazed me that we don't have as much science and rigor behind it. So that's what I'm working on. I'll share that with you all today. And I think it's especially compelling today because, 4 months ago, we all went through a really rough time. And I think a lot of us are still going through a rough time. And I hope everyone's okay and finding some semblance of silver linings. But I know that it's been harder for others. It's been harder for some than others. So I hope everyone's doing okay. But in some cases, a lot of the entrepreneurs I'm talking about, I was like, we've shored up our capital. We stabilized our budget. Sales aren't going as bad as we thought they would. And should we start scaling again?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the question I think we're going to pose. And I'd like to just throw that out to the group. And I'd love if you're not shy out there, what do you think? We can even make it more evergreen. We don't have to make it COVID oriented. Like, when you're on this journey from seed to A or whatever it is, when should you scale? What do you see in your business that would want you to think you can scale? You can direct it to me if you're shy, or you can direct it to the whole group in the chat. This is usually the point in my class when I start playing Jeopardy music. I don't know. What do you think, Richard? People are being a little shy. I hope they come.
Yeah,
when you have a repeatable AE, Pete's saying repeatable AE.
We've got some things coming in the Q&A panel here, which folks are using and they're upvoting. One says from Cheryl, my team is scaling. They're super busy. Michael saying when you've identified some sustainable patterns. John Skroka is saying, when it's right, and kind of with a winky face emoji. Jen Christie saying, hey, I've got repeatable, sustainable patterns. And that could be in the business. It could be in the process side of it.
Okay. I like that. I like the repeatability. I think Pete's saying that too. Repeatable and sustainable. Yeah. I want to bring even more rigor to it. And I tell you, most of the time when I challenge audiences on this, I get a lot of product market fit. Right? When we have product market fit. And kudos to Eric Rees and the work that he's done and Steve Blank like a decade ago to just teach us a better way on 0 to 1. Teach us the like disadvantages of water flow development. Teach us the disadvantages of selling vaporware before we have it. Teaching us all the powers of doing agile development with customers sitting right next to us, MVPs, rapid iteration. I mean, they changed entrepreneurship for the better, hopefully permanently. Unbelievable. And gave us the gift of this thing called product market fit. The problem is when you then ask what is product market fit, you get like 10 to 30. So come, let's throw them out there. Let's throw it out there. Throw it in the Q&A. What is product market fit?
I love that question. I think that is phenomenal, and folks. So just throw it in the Q&A panel.
Because Richard, I think it's a reasonable answer to say you scale when you have product market fit. Yeah. But it's like, what is it? I can tell you, actual potential buyers for people to talk to. Jonathan, Ryan says, pull from the customer. Yeah. Tell us more there, Ryan, if you can. Means you've developed. Cheryl says something that solves a real problem for a large number of people. It's pretty much what Mark Andreessen says. Jody says product that's had predictable segment will purchase. Renewals, customers paying, not churning or trying to cancel, says Jackie. I like that one a lot. I like that one a lot. So thank you for those insights. When I get, those are the answers I'll often get. Like, there's a lot of answers on revenue, and I have concerns with those. Like, I have concerns when people are like, yeah, product market fit is when you hit like $500,000 in sales. Like, really? That's message market fit. Right. Pete,
like dangerous too, because you can sell a bunch of stuff and people don't utilize and churn.
You sell ice to Eskimos. It's like, just because you hit $500,000, really? They didn't really need that. It just means you had good salespeople. It means you had a good messaging. It means you had good marketing, right? So that's pretty concerning. I think Andreessen says is similar to what some folks said, like when you have like a workable product in a big market. I think that's cool. I don't always think you need a big market if you're going to raise money from A16Z. But you don't always need a big market to be a successful entrepreneur. More wealth is created in the bootstrap, profitability, sell to private equity in 5 years, and you own 90% of the company. It's just, as tech entrepreneurs, we don't know that's an option, right? So it's like, so that's cool. It's also a little qualitative, like workable product and big market. Like, not that I'm like criticizing Andreessen by any means. The guy's like so successful and smart, but like, I'm seeking something that's more rigorous, right? Yeah. Now, Sean Ellis pushed the envelope a little bit on it and said, when you send a survey to your customers and 40% or more say they can't live without your product, now we're getting somewhere. Right. My only issue there is most folks in marketing or survey design know that surveys can be riddled with false positive signs. And especially if you're an entrepreneur emailing your customers, who might be some friends and family in the early days, and asking them, can you live without my product? What are they going to say? Really, the cost of saying I love your product when it's like mediocre. It's like so I'm just a little concerned with that.
Yeah.
Right. So what I really believe, and it came up in the comment, I forget who said it, is the retention part. I do think there's something big in there. Because not only, so we sold them something and they had an opportunity to repurchase or purchase more. So something had to go well. I feel like if I had to pick one metric and I had to choose between sales or, growth or like survey results, even NPS. NPS isn't bad, and we'll get to that. But it somewhat has that survey piece to it. It offsets some of it. I like retention. I like retention as the metric. The problem is, and we've got, I like revenue retention above 100%. I love customer retention above 90%. That does depend a little bit on where you're selling to. Like 90% long-term customer retention for a dating site obviously is terrible. The whole point is to get someone into a relationship. So there's some circumstances there, right? But for the most part, this is what we're looking for in SaaS. But that's a lagging indicator. That's the problem. Right? So like we have this business now, we have 30 customers. Do we have product market fit? Well, they haven't had a chance to churn yet.
Right.
They might be in, or maybe they haven't, even if I'm in monthly contracts, maybe they're still feeling it out. So oftentimes we're sitting here and, it's interesting as we scale 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, it's crazy how we report out, how's the business doing? Well, how's the churn? Mm-hmm. The churn is what happened 9 months ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? Especially an annual churn rate. The annual churn rate tells me nothing about the business today. It's like, how did we do selling and onboarding, and how was our product like a year ago? I mean, yeah, there's some arguments, maybe there's some bugs or whatever, but like for the most part, that's the case. So that's something I think we need to do, is we as founders need to be, and as sales leaders, we need to define what is the leading indicator to customer retention. Mm-hmm. Like I don't hear that from entrepreneurs enough. I mean, we talk a little about like the aha moment in Silicon Valley. They're talking a little about that. That's cool. I like that. But we need to figure out what the leading indicator of customer retention, because I might argue that customer retention is your metric around product market fit. I might argue that you need to have product market fit before you decide to scale. So this pursuit of this magical question of when to scale. And I think we need to create our leading indicator to know soon whether we have it. Okay, so let me kind of walk you through a framework around that and some examples that I've seen that are pretty close in the industry. So a good lead indicator of attention is P% of customers achieve E events in T time. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's bring that to life. 70% of customers for Slack send 2,000 team messages in 30 days. If that happens, they have product market fit. I like that. I like that better than a survey result. Okay. And there's some choices of variables here. And I know if you do some research, this is pretty close to what Slack's was. For Dropbox, 85% of customers, upload their files and share one within an hour. Okay. For HubSpot, I know this is the case because I lived through it. 80% of customers use 5 or more features out of the 25 features in the platform within 60 days. We actually, we kind of, it took us a while because we started HubSpot in 2006 and it was the beginning of the SaaS like creation. And so it took us a while, like probably 2 years to realize that churn needed to be our North Star. And it took us probably another year or two to realize that we needed a lead indicator of churn. And so we good and bad. The good was, I think we had maybe like 7,000 customers when we finally realized this. So a lot of data to study. And we studied lots of permutations. And this is the one that bubbled to the top. Now, so it kind of begs the question of like, well, how do I choose P, E, and T for my business? Like, what's the right percentage? What's the E? And what's the T, right? And so I think the P and the T are pretty straightforward. The E is really the hard one. So P, my point there is like, it doesn't matter that much, like somewhere between 60 and 80%, because like you're gonna watch it, and I'm gonna show you how we can watch it to bubble up stuff sooner. But like again, it's usually somewhere between 60 and 80%, and like don't go crazy about it because we'll kind of track it over time and we'll make sure it's going up, et cetera. The T is obviously very dependent on like the sales cycle and the complexity of implementation, right? Dropbox, 1 hour, fine. I mean, I can see value from Dropbox in 90 seconds, right? Workday for like a Fortune 500 company, 6 months. You know what I mean? That's like an entire, you know, HR platform, right? So like, that's just, it's hard to learn fast there. It's going to take them, that lead indicator is going to take a while, right? So, but for the most part, like I think most of us can get it within 30 days. And the closer you can see it, the faster you learn and the faster you know and can pivot, okay? All right, and then the E is the tough one, all right? So a couple of considerations there is number one, instrumentable, meaning like I don't need to rely on people to like get it. Like over time, I can make it programmatic because I do want to track this over time. And I want to, as we grow our install base, I want to be able to like just report a daily dashboard or a monthly dashboard on it. Two, factual and inspectable. I don't want it to be like a customer success manager saying they're in good shape. That's not good, right? That's way too subjective.
They're all green.
Exactly, right? It's like, yeah,
Of course, my
fine.
customers.
I like that. I like that. Thumbs up, thumbs up. That's our leading indicator. So yeah, factual, inspectable. You know, typically they're around like setup or usage or adoption or breadth of adoption or something like that. Surface is early. Okay, surface is pretty early. And the final one, which is really cool if you can get it, is align with your unique value prop. And that's what happened with HubSpot, right? Remember HubSpot at that time, we're a platform competing against point solutions, right? Like you want automate, lead nurturing, you buy Marketo. You want social media, you want buy Hootsuite. You want a blog, you buy WordPress. You want a suite that talks to each other, you buy HubSpot. And that made total sense that the usage of 5 or more features was going to be our lead indicator retention. And now as we move forward in aligning the entire organization around that, we essentially align the entire organization around our unique value prop. Super powerful in driving retention, super powerful in driving product market fit. Okay. So this is how I prefer to look at it. And any company that is in that sort of 0 to 1 journey, pursuing product market fit, I really don't see why this chart should not be the first slide in the board deck. I've only occasionally seen it in the board deck, only occasionally seen it up front, but like this, I can't wait for this slide. Like you send me your deck and you're in this journey, I'm skipping to this slide. It tells me so much of like whether we're graduating from product market fit. It tells me all the questions I need to be asking. Okay, so let me just explain this. What this is it's a cohort slide analyzing the pursuit of early indicator of customer retention by customer cohort. Okay, so let's say it was Slack, the Slack example I gave. Okay, and let's say our early indicator was send 2,000 team messages. So what this shows, and again, this isn't Slack's data, so it's just made up, but like they acquired in the early days 24 customers in January, and after a month, 3% of them had sent 2,000 team messages, and after 2 months, 27% of those 24 customers had sent 2,000 team messages. And after 7 months, 44% of those 24 customers had sent 2,000 team messages. That's not product market fit. I mean, come on. I mean, this is a messaging communication platform and half your customers are sending a reasonable amount of messages. You're not even close. So the company does a bunch of things. They change how they sell. They change who they sell to, the definition of their MQL. They enhance their onboarding. They enhance their product. They reduce friction. And things get really good, right? Yep. So you look ahead to September, they acquired 50 customers, only 12% had hit the 2,000 team messages, but after 2 months, 68% had, right? Compared to 27%. We got to look down the column. That's how we're improving, right? 75% in month 3 compared to 33%. Somewhere in here, we got product market fit. And then that's why I don't think the P matters that much, because as long as we see it improving, I feel like we're good. Okay, so the more we can organize it into this path. And then last slide, and I'll take questions on this piece, and then we'll move forward to go-to-market fit. But at some point, it is useful to go back and check if our guess on the retention, the early indicator retention, was right, it was close. And here's one way to do it. So this is a company, And so it's going to take some time. Like we have to acquire a bunch of companies and then wait a year, right, to see what happens, right? So this is a company that acquired 68 customers between 12 and 18 months ago. So here we are sitting in July, and this company essentially acquired 68 customers in the first half of 2019. Okay, so all of them are between 12 and 18 months old. The retention rate by that customer cohort, those 68 customers, is 82%. Okay, not bad. Now, 55 of those customers had hit the early indicator of retention in the first 30 days, right? The retention rate on those customers is 93%. 13 of them didn't. The retention is 39%. I think we got it. Yeah. I think we have confidence in this. We've learned something extremely important about our business. Okay, and we've statistically proven it. Now, same data set on the bottom is just no correlation, right? Same 68 customers, 82% retention rate. It's just that the ones that hit the early indicator have an 84% retention rate. The ones that didn't have 77%. That's not really a predictor. Now, did we hurt our business? No. So big deal. We guessed that our early indicator retention was 2,000 team messages. Turns out it didn't correlate. We did not hurt our business by focusing on getting people to send 2,000 team messages in the first 30 days. We just haven't figured it out yet. So now we can take a step back and look at some other data permutations and hopefully learn that. So, all right, cool. So I'll go forward to the go-to-market fit. This is sort of the summary of what I'm talking about here. Hopefully, if we have some product founders, they'll appreciate the layout and more of a programmatic format here for product market fit. Yeah, sorry. So I don't know. Were there any questions that popped up, Richard or Pete?
Yeah, there was one that came in. How do you know? And this is from Dan Grossberg. And folks, do use the Q&A panel. Mark's dropping a lot here. Feel free to ask questions if you want to know more. It's phenomenal content. This is from Dan Grossberg, Mark, and he was like, how do you know when you have a large enough sample size to kind of think about this? Say when you've got, like, how do you know when you've got enough data to make this equation work?
That's a good one. It gets super tricky. I often get a related question. I've enhanced my writing on this to account for in like big ticket sales. Because you can, like in these big ticket sales, this gets more complicated because like,
size.
Yeah, you can sell $500,000 deals. You got 7 customers. You're over a $3 million company. I mean, it's like, right? So it does depend. Like in these transactional situations, I would say like all the examples I've given in terms of Slack, Dropbox, HubSpot, it's definitely in the dozens. You know what I mean? Like hopefully you're selling dozens of customers and you're seeing that traction. And again, like you're going to hopefully start adding more customers and so those numbers are just going to kind of build up on you. It gets really tricky in the big ticket items. And I've done this with a couple of portfolio companies. And what you have to do there is the chart that I showed, you wouldn't be doing this chart at the board level. Instead, what you'd be doing, and we have a portfolio company that has like 22 customers right now, and they're a multi-million-dollar company already, right? And so what we do at the board level is we look at each we have a slide like this with each company name, and it has like 5 attributes. There's like a health card, right? Which is like things like breadth of adoption, implementation pace, breadth of product usage, adoption by users, breadth of adoption by product usage, and statistical evidence of ROI claim, right? So those could be like some of the things. And then there's just like a green, yellow, red score in it. And we've just trained the board to know what that is. So we can just look at it and that's like the language of the company. And so, we're looking at those to see if they're green, red, and yellow. I got to think more about the actual numbers. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think like really early on, there's like a transition, right? Where when you're doing the product management piece of things, it's qualitative. You're like, cool, what is your pain point? Oh, I have an idea. You tell me this. Okay, wonderful. I have an idea about how I can fit a feature to that pain point. So like that's initial hypothesis. Then you build that feature and then you see whether or not usages have, like you built that feature for a reason.
Yeah.
So like Slack, the reason why Slack exists, to send emojis to people and gifts, like obviously. So like presumably, like if people are sending gifts, it's a good thing. Like to use HubSpot as an example, I have a huge crush on like everything HubSpot because I'm a huge HubSpot user myself. my onboarding manager was phenomenal because he got me successful. He's like, cool, this is how you do landing pages. This is how you do a thank you page. This is how you do a form, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, cool, we're going to make a couple of those over the next week. And I'm like, yes, I will. And then we came back together and so now I knew how to do that. And then he had me start doing automations. And then he had me start doing this. And pretty soon I had these Legos. And then if you look at me and then you let me go, right? So I think you have a hypothesis of what those things would be.
Yeah.
And then you can start getting your spidey senses.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right.
Start doing back testing.
Yeah. So at least we've taken it to some sort of quantitative framework, but I don't know if we can say, I'll spend some time with some statisticians. Like sometimes they hear like 30 or 35 or something is like, but my hunch would be you want to organize these cohorts into at least sizes of like 10 to 20. And so that might require you to do it quarterly. That's okay, right? Just to show the progress. And then eventually you'd probably get to like a monthly sequence, you know?
And I
Start.
think that was too, where if you said like gut response to this, what do we need to have this be significant? And I'm in a semi-transactional sale, right? Not in the enterprise. 20-ish feels right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you get your dirty 30 logos and then figure out what works and what doesn't and go from there.
Exactly. And this journey, it can take a little while. Like it depends where you come out of the gate. It can take like 6 months or more.
Right.
And that's why it's like just maniacal. And we'll show later how to align the go-to-market to accelerate yourself through it. It's one thing to measure it. It's another thing on how does this impact the decisions you're making in terms of who you hire, how you comp your reps, et cetera, to help accelerate through that. So we'll do that toward the end here. You want to do one more, Richard?
We got a whole bunch coming in, so let's just go with John Soroka came in with another good question here. Let's answer this one live. Should some of your hypothesis in this kind of thinking be tied to what you'll need to upsell folks to get them to full platform adoption post contract? Whether they're coming off, and his point is like, are they coming off a pilot? Maybe are you adding different groups inside the organization, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm going through data points in my head here. I'm not feeling it as much. I think it's just like this is very focused on realizing the value of the opening use case. Of course, like if you're gonna need to do the upsell to create stickiness, hopefully this opening use case does create stickiness and has a moat around it. But if they don't, then you might have to perceive this opening use case as almost like how you'd perceive a free trial or like an opening pilot. And I would want to, derive it around something around an upsell that would create stickiness and moat. It's one of those things like I can come up with how to look at these things and this like P%, E events and T time, but like, and when we're looking at a very individual business, I can share some very specific examples of how you design it. But sometimes like you can't get it more detailed than that. It depends on the context. Maybe do one more, Richard, and then I can go to go-to-market fit.
Yeah, I love it. I think that was a phenomenal answer there. And I think there was another question just on the on that enterprise focus. So you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned if I was doing this in a big enterprise sale, what were those 5 key things that you mentioned? There was a question that came in on.
Yeah, sure. So it was like the things that typically come up in that scorecard, right? You're not going to organize like this. You're going to look at it on a per account basis. Things like, are they set up? Okay. Harder than you think in enterprises. Okay. Technically, right? The breadth of user usage. So how many people are using it? If that matters, right? Like sometimes it's just one administrator, but oftentimes like in a big enterprise, like there's multiple users and the more you can go across departments and users, the stickier you get. Number 3 would be something like the breadth of feature usage. Okay, so oftentimes in enterprise, we have multiple modules. If they're only using one module, they're less sticky than if you're using multiple, and specifics about that. And I've seen people have like scores on that to show, because some modules are more important than others. And then another example would be, like some sort of representation of ROI, right? So in like a tool like HubSpot, we can see the lead lift, right? So we can see the traffic and lead lift, and we can set some metrics in there. In a tool like Salesforce, you could probably see like revenue. In a tool like Workday, you could probably see, I don't know how long, like employer retention would be tough, but like there could be some like staff, or, staff efficiency or something like that. Right? So usually you can get at some sort of like something you see in the platform. And the final one you could do is like, gets a little more qualitative, but like, because in an enterprise setting, your account manager is like talking to these people every week, like you could get an assessment on like their tolerance to do a case study. You know what I mean? And like, hopefully we can work toward that pretty soon here. So those are some of the things that you could put in there. Still work in progress there, to be honest. So happy to receive feedback from folks as that come up. So let me move, Richard, if it's okay.
Yeah,
let me move to, so we've got hopefully a clear definition on product market fit. And I would argue that we should have product market fit before we scale. I would argue that we should align the entire organization around this pursuit in order to achieve it. Now, then there's this thing called go-to-market fit. Okay, so what I'm basically saying in the product market fit phase is the best people that accelerate through this don't think about scale, right? So remember Paul Graham, do unscalable things, Y Combinator, right? Like I totally agree with that at this stage. Remember David Cancel at Drift, good buddy. He was our chief product officer at HubSpot, great product leader. And I wrote a case on the early days for HBS on Drift. And I asked him about this stage, this product market fit stage. And he's like, I used to jump on an airplane to personally onboard customers that were paying me $50 a month. That's the right mentality. Do you know how hard it is to like come up with a business idea, to come up with a product idea, and to go not just sell 10 or 20 people to buy it, but actually to make 80% of them realize the value? Yeah. Like throw everything in the kitchen sink at that, right? Do unscalable things. But once we've proven it and made that cohort chart come to life, now we have to do it scalably. Whether we call that scale or profit or whatever, it's very related. And in SaaS, we often look at that through the world of unit economics. Okay, so we have like payback period, LTV to CAC, the magic number. Pick one or do all three. I'd prefer the latter, but we need some visibility, but we have the same issue that these unit economics are also lagging indicators. Like when I go to a board meeting, it's like, yeah, our payback period is 12 months. Great, but that's what you did 6 to 9 months ago, right? Like it's not what's happening today. Right. And so I need to also pursue the leading indicator of unit economics. Now we're gonna, geez, what time is it on the West Coast right now? Take some coffee. It's 9:40.
Or have a mimosa. We're going deep. It is the science of reestablishing growth. It's not
picture being on a chalkboard right now. Okay. So we know this is easy. Here's just some, we know the acronyms here: lifetime value, cost of acquisition of a customer. All we're basically saying is we know the end target. Let's use LTV to CAC for now. Okay. We want an LTV to CAC above 3. Okay. All we need to do is extract that goal back to what we have to do this week and this month to achieve that in 6 months. Okay, that allows us to get lead indicators to good unit economics, right? So we just have to break it down, and it's like, okay, LTV. Most people say it's how much is a customer paying you times the gross margin divided by churn. Okay, what's the CAC? It's the sales CAC plus the marketing CAC. How much does it cost to sell? How much does it cost to generate the lead? What's the marketing CAC? The cost per SQL divided by the close rate. Okay, you get. If your SQLs cost you $100 and you close 100% of them, your marketing cost per customer is $100. If your cost per SQL is $100, yeah, it's huge. That's awesome. If your cost per SQL is $100 and you close 10% of them, your marketing cost per customer is $1,000. Okay, so we can get that. What's your salesperson CAC? Like how much do they sell divided by their cost? How much do they sell is how many leads you get them times the close rate. So I've just extracted it back, and this is what it looks like in a very confusing format. Right? It's like, if I can do that to get to an LTV to CAC above 3, now I've just extracted that long-term goal back to something that's observable in the shorter term. Okay, and now here's just an example of what that might look like as I'm projecting what my goals could be, because every business is different. Every business has a different target ticket size. You usually try to get gross margin around 70-80%. We know where we want to try to get churn, but cost per SQL is going to be different. There's not a good or a bad. It just needs to work, you know? And I can operationalize that into part of my dashboards. We all use dashboards in our CRM, and this just allows me to show where's the red line need to be for my business to work. And as long as the blue line's above the red, then I should feel very good about my unit economics. So I like this more than what your payback is. Sure, tell me what your payback period is, but that's what, good job 6 months ago. Show me this dashboard, and now I'm confident that your unit economics are going to stay strong. And I can see that you're getting closer to great unit economics because you've got your cost per SQL in check. You're converting your leads to customers at a reasonable rate. You know, your ticket size is where it needs to be for all this to make sense. And so now I've been able to operationalize these two lead indicator charts, leading indicator to customer retention and leading indicator to unit economics. That, in my opinion, is product market fit and go to market fit, and that is when you should scale. Okay, so and please don't say I'm trying to scale slower. I'm just trying to scale healthier, right? And so it's kind of the same argument as like what Eric Ries, he kind of said, slow down. He kind of said, don't hire 10 reps and sell your idea before you build the product. Build your product. It's just there's a squishy time because I think, you know, both of you, Pete and Richard, you've probably seen countless examples. Most entrepreneurs acquire 25 customers, generate some level of revenue, raise a Series A, and hire 10 salespeople in the next month. And it kills businesses. Okay.
Yep.
So understanding when to do that is critical. So now we're going to get to how fast, but like, I don't know, Richard, if there's any questions on that.
Yeah.
It was just algebra.
Yeah, there wasn't very much there, Mark.
There's nothing heavyweight about that.
It's fantastic.
No, this is great, Mark. And the feedback too coming in from the audience in the Slack channel and the Q&A panel is just phenomenal. So we really appreciate you doing this so far. But in the interest of time, let's jump into that.
Okay. I'll finish up and then we'll take whatever questions we have. So that's the question is I think you should scale when you have product market and go to market fit. And hopefully we've provided some scientific data driven tools to understand that. And we'll show you later how to align with it. Now, how fast should you scale? Please do not hire 10 reps the next month when you have 2 on your team. Like, it's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Like, you know how many interviews that is? Go for it. You know, it's like, how many interviews is that?
Yeah.
How do you onboard those people? Who's going to manage them? Where are you going to find the demand for them? It's like you just haven't developed the capabilities to do that yet. We've developed capabilities to create customer success consistently in product market fit and scalably, but we haven't figured out how to add reps. And that's what we have to do in growth and more. So this is more about a pace. It's not like I promised my Series A investor 200% growth, so I'm going to hire 10 reps next month. It's like I promised my Series A investor 200% growth, and I said I'm going to hire 1 rep a month for 4 months. And I'm going to watch these charts. That's my speedometer. Oops, sorry. So this becomes my speedometer, and like I'm going to hire 1 rep a month for 4 months. I'm going to watch this. And if these early indicators stay green, I'm going to go to 2 reps a month for 4 months. If they stay green, I'll go 4 reps. Now we're cooking. So put together the 2-year plan and have 1 rep a month for 4 months, 2 reps a month, 4 months, 4 reps a month, 4 months. That's a beautiful plan. And assume like 10%, 15% rep attrition, okay? And then compare that to the plan where you're going to hire 10 reps all at once. And conservatively speaking, put in 50% retention for your reps. Well, I think realistically, it's like 20% retention. But conservatively speaking, tell me that you can hire 10 reps in a month and have 5 left a year later, right? And then show me the health of those 2 businesses. So yeah, the 10 reps in a month will have a better first quarter, but the pacing will have a better next year, right? And so it's just a much healthier, predictable business. So think about pace. And then also, like, at this point, we have to start thinking about segments and where to scale. All right. So we have to think about, this is a $30 million business at this point. And I like to look at segments through a three dimensions, product, market, and channel. Okay, so this company has two products, a new one and an old one. They sell the two markets, mid-market enterprise, and they sell through two channels, a direct channel and a partnership channel. And I like to try to attribute costs, and it's hard, but take a stab at it. I like to attribute each of these boxes as a mini business with their own payback period, their own churn, even their own leading indicators.
Right.
Because when I do that, I might look at this business and be like, oh shit, like we have LTV to CAC at 3 and our logo churns 90%. Let's scale.
Yeah.
But I might accidentally scale the partner channel, which actually isn't working. Like the LTV to CAC is low. I really only have direct figured out. That's it. And so this allows me to separate each of these boxes into a scale, experiment, or ignore, which is a great founder communication for the company. And then as I scale, I'm only going to scale, like as I'm adding people, I'm only going to add people in the known boxes. I keep the experiment boxes looking like our business looked like we're a seed funded business, cross-functional, rapid learning, different type of rep that's in there. Yeah. And hopefully I've got 3 bets on the table on my experiments. Hopefully one of them hits this year, and that's my growth avenue for next year. Right. So we just got to be a little careful on where to actually scale. So finally, now that we've have this sort of framework in place, now we can talk about the decisions that we have. Who should we target? Who is our rep? How do we comp people? Where should we generate demand at each of these phases? So in the product market fit phase, we're just trying to get those cohorts looking good. So stack the deck in your favor. You may talk about $1 billion market, but you may have a perspective that this segment here is awesome. So go after those early adopters, stack it in your favor, right? And like, we can try to expand it later, but like if someone's asking you for 5 case studies during your pitch, they're not an early adopter, right? But if they're psyched to send you 2 pages of feedback on your product, that's awesome. Okay, so find early adopters, win at all costs. Remember the David Cancel story, do unscalable things. And the sales hire here is like, they don't even actually succeed when you scale. They probably can't even hit quota. This is like a half product manager, half account executive. They have the product management abilities of like going out and talking to 20 customers and seeing the patterns and communicate to the engineering team.
Right.
But they have the account executive abilities to like handle objections and talk about money and close deals and move some through a sales process. Again, I find a lot of these people struggle to hit quota when we get to the growth and moat stage. Very different hire, number 1 versus number 10. And if we're talking about scalable demand gen, if we're talking about comp plans, if we're talking about pricing, it's the wrong conversation at this point, right? It's like, you should be able to use your network and your board's network and your team's network to get to dozens of customers, okay? Pricing, don't worry about it. Like, I love just to say, like, listen, sounds like we've built and we're working on what you have been struggling with. We're going to be charging $50,000 a year for this thing. We're just looking for 10 customers to be beta customers and give them a 90% discount for the first 6 months. Are you in? As long as they're committed. I don't like free, but I just want some skin in the game so that we can actually try to establish those cohorts. And comp plan, like, honestly, this PM plus AE, they're probably more like a PM. They don't even need a commission plan. It's just like, I'd hate to like penalize someone if it took us 3 months versus 6 months versus 12 months to get through this process, right? Now that changes at go-to-market phase. Now we have to work on the early majority. We need a codified sales playbook. We can't do win at all cost. We need a playbook. We need a team that can build a playbook. This is usually like 3 or 4 people, and they're good. They enjoy being process builders. They're going to sit in a room together for film review every day and listen to film and think if the playbook is right. And they're going to iterate and they're going to change, et cetera, et cetera. And we absolutely need a scalable demand gen program right now. We can't get the unit economics to work unless we have content marketing or an SDR program or something working, right? And pricing and compensation plan is critical at this point. This drives our unit economics. So my favorite comp plan right at this point is half the comp when the customer signs the contract and half the comp when the customer hits the early indicator of retention. I'm not trying to move my AEs into CSMs, but I want them, I know that the likelihood of that customer hitting the early indicator of retention has a lot to do with the expectations that that salesperson sets in terms of what to expect and what needs to be done. So, and it's early enough, usually it takes 30 days. I'm just deferring half the comp for 30 days. And that creates really nice alignment with our journey to sustain retention through this process. Okay, and then finally, once we move to the growth and mode phase, now we have to think about those scale versus experiment versus ignore buckets. We have a sales management layer that's going to reinforce the playbook that we built. And now we need the coin operator rep, to quote the sales learning curve written 20 years ago in HBR. It's like the process executor. Would not be good here. Would not be good in product market fit. Just like, give me the comp plan, give me the pitch deck, give me the sales playbook, and let me go and make a lot of money and make you all a lot of money. Okay. And so hopefully that gives you some insight. You know, so we've got, I think, like 5 or 10 minutes for questions, and I got like 2 minutes of like links for people to download some of the stuff I talked about.
That's awesome, Mark. Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of questions about this content and this programming. We'll share the recording afterwards, probably around 10, 11 a.m. tomorrow. We'll point out to all the different resources.
I'll get you guys the deck too, so you can push that around.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out something. I, like, as an entrepreneur and a founder who thinks about a lot of stuff and like does a lot of has gone through this process myself, in this area, and have done writing on that. It's phenomenal to see Mark talking about this in such a, cohesive, rigorous format as an investor, right?
Thanks,
because
Pete. Yeah, thanks.
that is extraordinarily absent in investor land. And so when Mark was like kind of hinting at some anti-patterns there, which sometimes like nobody wants to dance on people's graves, right?
Yep.
But like, you can really screw up your business by doing these things wrong. And usually a really great place where like bad ideas come from can be investors who have no idea what. And so I think
but they worked at Goldman Sachs for 5 years. Come on, dude.
But so like what you're seeing here is like somebody who is just like, native with respect to this. Maybe David Skock over at Matrix does some really good writing on this
operators,
as well.
Former operators. I mean, it's a great point, Pete. And to your point, like, that's an important part of our diligence process at Stage 2 Capital is like, I always talk to the prior investors and the syndicate investors. And my first question is like, when they close this round, what do you want them to do? And if they're like, hire 10 reps in the next month, I'm like, let's have a talk about that.
How committed are you to that? Yeah. Anyway, I want everyone to kind of recognize how atypical this is and how fantastic it is that market is externalizing this for everybody.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And I think that's actually a great transition to a question that we have. There was a comment that, hey, like if there's any more common sense, I think my brain will explode with this. But really, as an entrepreneur, right, back to Pete's point, as an entrepreneur who's out there talking to VCs and trying to raise capital, how can we frame this and better set expectations around this is a more rigorous way to build a growth engine in my organization?
Yeah, so like, let's just talk about the revenue plan and forecast. I mean, it starts from the bottom up around largely sales hires and the pace of that and the marketing spend. And so I would just like make some assumptions about when you would progress through each of these phases and when you'll be in a position to start adding reps and when you'll be in a position to start adding the pace, increasing the pace of the reps. And then use this framework to say, we're not going to do it unless we see these things. Like, I'm not going to add reps if half of our customers don't set up the product.
Right.
And like investors are like, oh yeah, why would you? Of course. So if you're just having that discussion, it's like, we are assuming right now our early indicator of retention is X. And we're very early in that journey. We just defined it last month. And it's improving, but we want to see it hit 60% before we start adding reps. We think we can do that in 4 months. And that's why we set the plan up accordingly. That's when we start adding reps. But if we hit it in 2 months, we're not going to wait.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And if it takes 6 months, we're gonna have to wait. And we'll just stay in touch with you every month to see where we're at. And we'll use this as an indicator. So it's just like, it's the same thing as like, you're not gonna friggin' add reps if you thought you were gonna burn $500,000 in the quarter and you burn 2 million. You're gonna put the brakes on. It's just that your burn rate is such a lagging indicator of what's going on in the business. And so that's just the conversation we're setting up.
Yeah, and it seems like it's really about expectation setting out of the gate with this. Like, this is it, and if we hit these things, we're going to throw more gas on, and if not, we're going to take a step back. bunch of questions, Mark. You mentioned kind of that evolution of what you're hiring for the sales role,
Yeah.
right? A couple questions. What happens to the actual people in those roles as you
Great
transition
question.
to the organization? And there's a few
Yeah.
on this. So folks, thanks for
Yeah.
asking about that.
Yeah, they run the experiment buckets. So remember when we talked about like that example I gave, it's like
Yeah.
we've only figured out the direct business in the enterprise and the mid-market, and we've got a couple experiments that we want to run. We want to try to figure out this partner channel. We built this new product, so we want to figure out how to sell that to our customers and new customers. And so like they're perfect for those experiment buckets because they're rapid. And sometimes they leave, and sometimes you help them find their next job. I mean, there's such an important ingredient in the entrepreneur ecosystem, and they're so hard to find.
Well,
Don't keep them in the factory.
and I love when I saw you give this talk a couple months ago, that actually stuck with me. That PMAE first sales hire, that guy or gal doesn't want to go do stuff in Salesforce.
No.
They're going to go be an early stage, maybe
Exactly.
first VP or CXO somewhere.
Exactly.
Couple more questions just kind of on the people front on this, because I think it's a pretty hot take, I think, versus what conventional wisdom has been out there.
Mm-hmm.
That process builder, sort of, you've got go-to-market fit, but that process builder hire, is that more of like a sales ops type person? Is that more of a sales manager type person? Like, how can you just talk a little bit
kind of
more?
have both. You kind of have both. So sales ops, I mean, it's big field, right? But that's typically like set the CRM up, hook it up to SalesLoft or Outreach, make sure your website, like your landing pages are flowing in there. Like that's sales ops, right? But they usually aren't like, oh, we're going to use like a Sandler sales playbook, or we're going to use Medic. They're usually, so there's the sales playbook, which is like, how do we prospect? What do we say? How many touches? What's the discovery call look like? What's a good discovery call? How do we coach you through that? How do we develop that discovery call guide? What is our pitch deck? Like, how do we give a demo, et cetera? What's the main objections? How sales ops not good at that. Right. Like that's more of sales management. So that's that process builder. But once we understand that, we have to codify it. So I guess, I'd probably like, it probably goes sales manager first, then sales ops, and sales ops might be in between 2 and 3.
Right.
I'd hate for them to codify something that we're still iterating on.
And it feels like the right way to you build process on paper before you start to throw
exactly.
technology
Exactly.
You have to, if you automate bad cadences, that's all you're really doing. With
exactly.
Just a couple more questions here, Mark, and we'll take maybe 2 more. So folks, if you have other questions, get them in there, upvote the ones that we've got. So how would this change? And this is actually a really interesting question from David Fox. Would this model change if you were selling to in the public sector, right? You're selling to highly regulated environment, you're selling to the Fed, you're selling to defense or 3-letter agencies. Would this change, and if so, how?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I teach the Mark 43 case at HBS. If you don't know, they sell to police departments. Their first customer was the Washington, D.C. Trying to think at through that lens. Not really. Like Scott, I've collaborated with him quite a bit, and he did a lot of this. I don't think it changes much. I think the only difference is like a lot of times in those situations, the bar to even play the game is so high. You have to get like tremendous amounts of certification. So if anything, like it might be more important because, it's one thing to run your business in software for 2 years, selling to the SMB segment and run a suboptimal churn rate of 30% a year. If you do that in the public sector, it's going to get around fast. You'll probably lose your certification. So something like this may be even more critical, but I don't think it changes much.
Oh, I think that's great. And Mark, we're wrapping up here. I know you've got some wrap up slides, so let's.
Let me just buzz through that, just so you know, and I'll get these slides to Richard and Pete. But here's some links. This work is actually currently sitting in this ebook right now. I'll write it up as a book probably in the next year or so, but it's a 40-page ebook right now that you can just download off the Stage 2 website. We also have some cool resources like the bottoms up playbook that I mentioned in terms of like equating sales hires with demand. So there's a template there if you want to play with that, hiring your first sales leader, and just the blog in general if you want to check that out. If you're not familiar with Stage 2, we're the first venture capital firm run and backed by sales leaders. We have roughly 125 CROs, CMOs, COOs. You got Jay Simon at Atlassian. You know, Leela is CMO at SurveyMonkey.
Sydney Sloan, who we're going to be hearing
Sydney
from.
Sloan, who's here from later today. We've got Hillary Headley runs ops at Zoom. You know, pick a unicorn, software unicorn. We probably have one or two sales and marketing leaders from there on staff. We also have an emerging leaders syndicate if you're interested in that. We teach you how to invest in this way and expose our deal flow to you without having to be an LP. And then, you know, I teach at HBS. I've written 10 cases on a lot of this stuff. You want to check out my public faculty page, you can use those. And finally, if you mentioned a big fans of the book, thank you for that support. Just know that 100% of those proceeds are donated to build.org, which is a phenomenal business or nonprofit that helps underprivileged children, largely African-American, in tough high schools to get through high school by teaching them entrepreneurship. So your dedication to the book is, I think, close to $100,000 of donations to Build. So thank you for all that support.
Phenomenal, Mark. And thank you so much. You're incredibly busy and incredibly high demand speaker. Thank you for sharing this amazing algebra with us today. And from everybody at Modern Sales Pros and all of our attendees here today, thank you so much for your time, Mark. Really.
Thanks, folks. Enjoy the rest of the day. Take care.